Oil prices drop and take stocks with them. Legislation to reopen may be bipartisan and ready to roll out from Congress. Shake Shack looks like they're going to send a whole bunch of money back to the federal government. Governor Pritzker advances testing in his state. The Russia investigation may be turned on its head, and a shooting in high gun law Canada may top the news, but we may not hear anything about it. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. You know, I got this habit of coming in here on Monday and saying, you guys broke the country over the weekend while I wasn't reporting on anything, and unfortunately this weekend was no different. So much stupid stuff, and we've got so much to cover here, and I got so far that we have an opinion piece in here to talk about. So before we get started, make sure you head on over to freedomscoop.com where you can check out all sorts of creators. We've got the Generational Gap. We've got Stephen Ignoramus. We've got my show. We've got the R-Rated Conservative. We've got Wyatt Birkenhoff. And new to Freedom Scoop, we have got, and this should be the first episode that appears on there, by the way, the Freckles and Brit Show should be showing up this morning. So make sure you go over there and check them out as well. We're happy to welcome them in. I think they're going to be a great addition to the cause. So, starting out, of course, with stocks, we will start with Investors Business Daily. Dow futures fall as crude prices plunge, the big risk in this coronavirus stock market rally. Dow futures fell Monday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures amid plunging crude prices. The coronavirus stock market rally had another strong week, with breakouts rapidly expanding, including Amazon.com, Netflix, Microsoft, Apple, Alibaba, AMD, Shopify, and Cadence Design Systems. I guess I don't know that one. Are notable names to nearby points. This is a time to take positions in leading stocks in the coronavirus market rally. While the coronavirus crisis and an uncertain recovery are major concerns, being overly cautious amid this positive stock market trend carries serious risks as well. You guys wonder why the market fell as far as it did. I can't even say it's still falling, but you guys wonder why it fell as far as it did when you keep saying crap like that. And I know I've said this one before. Amazon stock and Netflix stock are extended from buy zones, with Netflix earnings late Tuesday. But Microsoft stock is still in range. Shopify and AMD are near buy points after clearing aggressive entries. Alibaba stock is eyeing its own early buy point. Cadence Design stock almost hit a buy point on Friday. With earnings due Monday, Apple stock could be forming a handle after retaking key support level. Excuse me. Amazon, Netflix, Microsoft, and AMD are all part of the IBD leaderboard. Microsoft stock and Baba stock are on Swing Trader. Netflix stock, Microsoft stock, and AMD stock are all on the IBD 50 list. Microsoft, Alibaba, Cadence are all on the IBD long-term leaders. All of these names, including Apple stock, all boast strong relative strength lines at or near highs that reflects their outperformance versus the S&P 500 index. The Dow Jones futures fell 1.95% versus fair value, the S&P 500 futures lost 1.8%, and the NASDAQ 100 futures sank 1%. As the coronavirus stock market rally has strengthened... Why do I have a debug? That's weird. I've got a debug note at the bottom of this webpage. I hope it's just the webpage. MOAT debug mode, MOAT ready. I don't know how I entered that, but... hey, crap happens. As the coronavirus stock market rally has strengthened, the extreme volatility in Dow Jones futures has faded. Some big overnight gains or losses in Dow futures still occur. Volatility could easily return in the current market environment, with these earnings seasons likely to swing Dow Jones futures and especially individual stocks. Remember that overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. U.S. crude oil futures for May plunged 34% to about $12 a barrel as storage space runs low. June crude futures fell sharply, but far less, as the gap between the two contracts is much wider than usual. We'll look at the coronavirus stuff later on. So that's the next paragraph for that. So we will move on to not MSNBC, CNBC. I never do MSNBC because they never really give articles. It's just little short blurbs with a video on them. And I don't like that. Even though we are going to watch a little or listen to a little bit of a video later here. For the most part, yeah, I'd rather read the article for you guys. U.S. oil price on pace for their worst day ever as storage runs out. This is from Sam Meredith over at CNBC. U.S. oil prices tumbled to their lowest level in more than 21 years on Monday, not adjusted for inflation, of course, with crude storage facilities filling rapidly as the coronavirus pandemic continues to crush demand. The May contract of U.S. West Texas Intermediate futures fell to $11.54 a barrel on Monday, down more than 36%. It means the price grade is on track to register its worst day back to contract inceptions in 1983. To be sure, the May contract expires on Tuesday, thus leaving it exposed to weaker trading volumes and more extreme market moves. In June, contract of WTI, which is more actively traded, stood at $22.29 a barrel, almost 11% lower. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude stood at $26.41 on Monday, around 6% lower for the session. It comes amid heightened concern that the volume of oil held in U.S. storage is rising sharply, with the coronavirus crisis compounding the problem by dramatically reducing consumption. The current forward crude oil curves for Brent and WTI are now in very deep contango. I'm not familiar with that word, but the contango is also very front-loaded. Bjarne Schildrup, chief commodities analyst at SEB, told CNBC via email. The Contango Market implies oil traders believe crude prices will rally in the future, encouraging them to store oil and sell it at a later date. The curves are saying that we have a big problem with the storage of oil right now. Schildrup said nothing the general market view seemed to be that the global economic trough and the oil demand trough would be April 2020. In the second half of this year, he continued, the problem of storage capacity should vanish rapidly because oil demand is expected to rebound strongly while inventories will draw down sharply. This is why the Brent crude average oil price for 2021 is holding up so well at $40 a barrel, Schildrup added. Earlier this month, analysts at Goldman Sachs warned that the coronavirus shock was extremely negative for oil prices and is sending landlocked crude prices into negative territory. The U.S. investment bank said it expected waterborne crudes like Brent to be far more insulated from the coronavirus shock, with prices likely to remain at near cash costs of $20 a barrel, albeit with temporary spikes below. Brent is priced on an island of the North Sea, roughly 500 meters from the water where tanker storage is accessible. In contrast, WTI is landlocked and 500 miles from water. This illustrates an important point, analysts at Goldman Sachs said in a research note. They argued waterborne crudes were likely to be better positioned than landlocked price grades, like crude oils in the U.S., Canada, and Russia, because they had comparatively easy access to tanker storage. The U.S. situation is quite dire, Daniel Hines, senior commodity strategist at ANZ, told CNBC's Squawk Box on Monday. Clearly being a relatively landlocked market there, we are seeing real pressure on storage as a consequence of the collapse in demand. Hines continued, without any sort of hope, I suppose, at least over the next month, of that easing up. I think prices are going to remain under pressure. So, everybody go fill up your tank again because the prices are going to stay down, it looks like. Because they ain't got no place to put it. So I vote that we all go out and help them out. Disclaimer, if you're starving to death, please don't go fill your tank first. Go buy food first. Alright, one more here. What to watch today? Dowd set to sink as oil prices plunge. This is from Matthew J. Belvedere and Peter Shacknow over at CNBC. Dow futures were pointing to a 500-point drop at Monday's open as May futures contract on West Texas Intermediate crude was sinking more than 38% to around $11 per barrel. The May contract on WTI, the American oil benchmark, is set to expire Tuesday. The June contract was off over 11% to about $22 per barrel. Oil has been tanking on slumping demand as coronavirus mitigation measures have kept drivers off the roads. At the same time, crude storage facilities have been filling up rapidly. This appears to be the same article we just read, just by different authors. But we've got something else in a paragraph here that, the next paragraph is other stuff that we're going to be talking about here. So we're going to move off of this article and move on to the Daily Wire. So, starting off the Daily Wire, Senator Barrasso, Schumer and Pelosi have slowed down helping America to get their wish list met. This is from Daily Wire News. Senator John Barrasso told Fox News host Maria Bartiromo, is that how you pronounce that, on Sunday, that Democratic leaders House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer have slowed down the federal government's ability to get Americans financial help during the coronavirus crisis. I'd still love to know where that money's coming from. I realize if the other party was in power, it'd be being spent even faster, so, I mean, they're both spending their way out of this at this point, but man, I would love to know where that money's going to come from. Barrasso made the remarks in response to Bartiromo asking him about the Paycheck Protection Program, which ran out of money last week after Senate Democrats refused to replenish it. There are small businesses and paychecks needing to be taken care of, Barrasso said. There will be people who are still applying for these loans. I see it in Wyoming. It's been very successful. $350 billion already spent. That's a benchmark for success, apparently. It's helped 15 million Americans stay on the payroll. Fair point. The money, we had a vote Friday and the Democrats blocked it. The money in that program is really paychecks for hardworking Americans, people who work for small businesses, which is over half of all Americans. Barrasso continued, I heard earlier on the news that Mnuchin and Schumer and Pelosi are working on a deal. Every Republican is going to want to scrutinize that, because we know that when Schumer and Pelosi are involved, we know they slowed down the CARES Act because they wanted their wish list included. They very much did. Barrasso, who is a medical doctor, said that the country needed to get the economy back open, but needed to do so using science and using precise metrics to track the coronavirus cases across the country. And then there's the transcript from Fox News, which we're not going to go through on that. So, yeah, it's for the most part an opinion piece, but, I mean, we're seeing it there too. And it's a hard place for me because we do need to stop spending, and we are just passing this along to our children at this point, especially given the fact that my generation is below the replacement rate for children. And yet, we do still need to make sure these people are getting paid when the government is telling them that they're not allowed to go to work. So, I mean, which direction do you go at that point? Let's move on. Shake Shack returning $10 million in government loan meant for small businesses. With the Paycheck Protection Program already out of money, the burger chain says other restaurateurs need the loan more than it does. We're going to be hearing about this again at the end of the story, but I want to read this now because it has to do with the COVID and the recovery from it. This is from Stephanie Rule and Alex Johnson over at NBC News. Shake Shack, one of the several large restaurant chains that got federal loans through the coronavirus stimulus law meant to help small businesses, said Sunday night that it is giving back all $10 million. The New York-based burger company is among more than a dozen companies with annual revenues in the hundreds of millions that are reported to have received money from the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. The loan program set aside $349 billion in the stimulus law called the CARES Act to help small businesses keep their workers on the payroll. Less than 2 weeks after it started, the program has already run out of money. In a statement Sunday night on LinkedIn, Danny Meyer, Shake Shack's founder and CEO of its parent company, Union Square Hospitality Group, and Randy Garudi, Shake Shack's CEO, said the company pursued the loan because the law stipulated that it was open to any restaurant location with no more than 500 employees, which describes Shake Shack's 189 individual U.S. restaurants. The PPP came with no user manual and it was extremely confusing, they wrote. The program offered to forgive the loans if recipients rehired furloughed and laid off workers by June. Just because Shake Shack and its parent company had already furloughed hundreds of employees, they said they gambled that the best chance of keeping our teams working off the unemployment line and hiring back our furloughed and laid off employees would be to apply now and hope things would be clarified in time. But they said they had no idea the fund would dry up so quickly after they were able to secure separate funding last week. We've decided to immediately return the entire $10 million so restaurants that need it most can get it now. We know that the first phase of the PPP was underfunded and many who need it most haven't gotten any assistance, Meyer said. Meyer and Garudi wrote, urging Congress to ensure that all restaurants, no matter the size, have equal ability to get back on their feet and hire back their teams. Our people would benefit from a $10 million PPP loan, but we're fortunate now to have access to capital that others do not. They wrote, until every restaurant that needs it has the same opportunity to receive assistance, we're returning ours. This is amazing. I am kind of disappointed that Shake Shack did apply for this. McDonald's would have had no business applying for this because most of their locations have under 500 employees, but man, they have got massive, massive coffers that they can hold themselves up. Taco Bell, big franchise places like that, Red Robin's the same way. Under the rules, they could have all applied for this, but I would not give a penny to any of them because they can hold themselves up. This was supposed to be for small businesses, not corporations, and yet we see Shake Shack getting it, and they're corporate, and they're giving it back. So, and once again, I know that there are going to be restaurants that aren't going to stay up. It's a fact of life right now. They're told that they're non-essential, and unless they have a major amount in takeout, they're not going to be able to hold up even with some of these loans. My job just got the loan, which means I'm going back to 40 hours this week, which means I'm going to be dead tired on Wednesday because once I'm back and once I've eaten and once we play video games on Tuesday night, yeah, I'm going to be definitely dead on Wednesdays, but it's worth it for you guys here. But on top of this, where I was going with that is, I mean, with everybody sitting here cooking at home and discovering their love for cooking, I think we're going to see, I keep saying, I think we're going to see restaurants crop back up in the places, the ones that fell. People who did work throughout the entire time, whether working from home or going to work every day, are going to have more capital than a few people that were in the restaurant industry and buy up assets for relatively cheap and open something else up. So we'll see what happens there, but good for Shake Shack, and we'll talk about this again at the end of the show. Now we've got CNN Business. Experts say it might be time for grocery stores to ban customers from coming inside because of COVID-19. We're getting draconian here, folks. This is from Nathaniel Meyerson over at CNN Business. Dozens of grocery store workers have died from the coronavirus despite masks, temperature checks, and capacity restrictions to keep them safe. So far, supermarkets have resisted the most draconian policy, banning customers from coming inside. However, some worker experts, union leaders, and small grocery owners believe it has become too dangerous to let customers browse aisles. Coming into close range with workers, grocery stores are still flooded with customers, and experts say it's time for large chains to go dark to the public and convert to curbside pickup and home delivery for food and other essential goods. Careless customers are probably the biggest threat to workers right now, according to Mark Perroni, president of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. Jackass. The union laid off 85% of its grocery store workers reported that customers are not practicing social distancing in stores. Anything that reduces the need for interaction with the public and allows for greater physical distancing will ultimately better protect grocery store workers, said John Logan, professor and director of labor and employment studies at San Francisco State University. Shuttering stores and repurposing them for pickup and delivery would only be a positive step. Many small independent grocery stores have done this to protect their staff. Mike Houston, general manager of Tacoma Park Silver Spring Co-op in Tacoma Park, Maryland, decided to close his grocery store to the public late March when the state announced a shelter-in-place order and switched to curbside pickup. I wonder if that shows up in Fallout 3. It was clear, and there was no real way to protect my staff and the public, especially as we served 960 people a day, on average, in a 4,200 square foot store, Houston said. I'm unwilling to put grocery store employees, essential though we are, in a position to risk what can be a fatal infection. So, for the most part, they've got all the protections in place. They've got the plexiglass windows up there on the registers where people can't breathe in the faces of people. And I mean, for the most part, in the small town I live in, they're just ignoring that anyway. And I mean, your interaction is as close as it always was. For the most part, you just have that window there while you're standing over there punching your number into the pin pad. But for the most part, I think this is a reaction to the fact that people were balking at the fact that they couldn't go to church when people were packed in just as tight in some grocery stores in some urban areas. Now, once again, where I live, it's not a problem. It's a small town. The grocery store is small, but I mean, there's not that many people to go in it at one time either. And we've been able to pretty well spread ourselves out. So, I mean, social distancing is easy. But yeah, in a place like Tacoma Park and DC area in Maryland, or up in probably inner city Boston, not even inner city Boston, but Boston suburbs and some of the surrounding areas, they're still packed in pretty tight, and their stores are relatively small. So, yeah, I could see people being packed into these places like that. Even the Woodmans in the bigger city around here, I see people online, and they're not social distancing. So, now that people have pointed this out and complained that they can't go to church for it, I'm sure that there's a part of the reason there is why they're trying to shut down these stores, so they can't have that argument anymore. But this may be a foregone conclusion here coming up as we go along. Let's see. Okay, so this is one that came to me from Midget B over in the Discord server. Safer at home violation. Pinellas County game shop owner in touch with lawyers after being arrested for staying open. This is from News Channel 8 in Tampa, Florida. Christine McLarty writes, Pinellas Park, Florida. A Pinellas County business owner is being deemed a criminal by some and a hero by others. It's a game, said the Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gualtieri. I guess he's good at games. It's his business, but it doesn't work that way with the law. The sheriffs arrested 36-year-old Galen Wood of St. Pete Thursday night for violating the Safer at Home order that's in place amid the coronavirus pandemic. Wood is the owner of Kitchen Table Games in Pinellas Park. Deputies said they checked the business out 5 times in the past 2 weeks and issued warnings. They said Wood argued and just wouldn't listen. He was defiant and flat out refused to cease operating, said Sheriff Gualtieri. 8 on your side asked Wood how he felt when he was being arrested Thursday night. I was just shocked and amused, honestly, Wood said. He was protecting his freedom by following social distancing rules and keeping curbside business open. The sheriff said the business was supposed to be fully shut down. Deputies said several people complained the business was not following safer at home rules. They said it's not fair for this non-essential business to be open for curbside takeout when other non-essential businesses weren't allowed to be either. Well, you know what? They can't arrest you all. Just keep that in mind. It's the same way the union's been operating for 40 years. They can't fire us all. The sheriff said that the situation came to this. It's taking away from other things I need to be doing. It's extremely frustrating, he went on to say. I tell you who it should be most frustrating for is the people doing the right thing. Wood told us Friday he still believes he was complying with the governor's order, and he wasn't going to let county administrators take away his rights. The sheriff told 8 on Your Side that it's simply not true he was not complying with the governor's order. As I said previously, people would have to beg their way into jail. He begged and he got what he asked for, said Sheriff Gualtieri. While we were speaking with Wood on Friday, other small business owners in the community drove up to show their support for his actions. One couple made a sign for Wood that said Braveheart, true small business hero. I had a COVID cough and then I knocked the microphone out of the way. I'm sorry for if that blasted in your ears. Hey brother, we support you. You're a patriot, said Leo Vigiano from his car window. He and his wife are small business owners in St. Pete who are currently shut down for the pandemic. They fully support Wood's decision to stay open. I can hardly say it without choking up, said Don Vigiano. But to see you in that orange suit last night, it's over the top. Wood became overwhelmed with emotion himself, and with tears in his eyes, he thanked them for the support. Meanwhile, Sheriff Gualtieri is not impressed. He said Wood's actions are deemed criminal amidst the COVID-19 pandemic because he won't comply with the law. And here it comes. That's going to be the part of this, too, is this is going to make people into outlaws. I've talked about getting a large, full-size car with a spacious trunk and a large back seat to do things if we do get to the point that we're locked down that we can't even move among places anymore, because there's going to become a market for that. Criminal activity sets up black markets. That's always been the case. And where there are black markets, there are people with questionable morals that dislike the government that are willing to take those positions. I'm not going to say I know anybody like that, but I kind of know somebody like that. All right, let's look on here. This is an opinion piece from Fox News. Liz Peek, coronavirus reopening. Democrats resisting this for a reason. Nancy Pelosi does not want Americans to go back to work. She and other Democrats will loft every possible excuse to prevent this nation from reopening, claiming that Trump's intention of doing so is deeply frivolous and wrong, as Pelosi claimed in a recent tweet. She mocks the president's supposedly cavalier attitude that people will die, so be it, instead of a science and testing based path to reopening the economy. Here we go. The left downplays the effectiveness of therapies like hydroxychloroquine and remdesivir and derides doctors like Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil who won't share the punditry's alarmism. They are especially scornful of any hint of optimism. They will insist that every single human must be tested before a bricklayer, a piano tuner, or a professional golfer can safely earn a living, knowing that we are far from achieving that goal. Well, if the professional golfer wants to earn a living, golf courses in Wisconsin are open. Keep that in mind. And there's enough video technology at this point that they should be able to work here. Who would have thought that rescuing the country from massive unemployment and collapsing incomes would become a political hot potato? Who would have thought that Democrats would be willing to sacrifice the well-being of the nation in order to win an election? Only someone who has watched Democrats topple President Trump for 3 years with no success, or try to topple rather, for 3 years with no success, but ever-increasing desperation, having failed to oust him by alleging conspiracy with Russia and then through partisan and unfair impeachment. Now they pray that a devastated economy will demolish his best argument for a re-election. That could happen, especially if blue and purple state governors around the country keep the lid on activity, demand that small businesses remain shuttered, and enforce the general misery, all in the name of keeping us safe. Mayor de Blasio is threatening to keep New York's municipal swimming pools closed this coming summer for budget and health reasons. Can you imagine what impact that might have for city kids who have been cooped up for months and who are desperate to play outside? Trump's critics have jumped on him for lack of available testing. The president was not directly responsible for the chaotic approach to making test kits available, of course, but the buck indeed stops with the White House. The failures of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the FDA can be laid at the president's door, and Democrats are eager to do that while upping the supposed cost of the shortfall. With most other initial snafus resolved, insufficient testing is the main complaint. That's why Adam Schiff, for example, recently tweeted this. There's no way to safely reopen without massive testing, yet we're barely testing more people this week than last. If Trump ignores the experts and forces a premature reopening, even more Americans will die. Get it? Not enough tests means it's not safe to reopen, so more people will die, and it will be President Trump's fault. Meanwhile, Dr. Anthony Fauci, whose popularity with the left waxes and wanes on how much he butts heads with the president, yeah, that's a roller coaster, even worse than the stock market at this point, recently pushed back against Democrats' testing mantra, saying, the emphasis that we've been hearing is essentially testing is everything, and it isn't. Fauci also said that early problems with testing had largely been resolved and that there would be, in fact, enough tests to start reopening society. This is a sideshow, yes, we need to lift the restrictions on people's movements cautiously, but at the same time we must move forward even if we don't have universal testing. And that's going to be, she's right. She is absolutely right when she says this, but if you're being forced to go back to work on the same token, I mean, we've got to have the level of freedom there too. So there are people that are never going to want to go back to work, and there are people that are immunocompromised that aren't going to be able to go back to work. So we've got to strike a balance, and that's where I got or pulled the title from this for this episode from, is the fact that there doesn't seem to be a balance, and this is all completely polarized at this point. So I value the opinion of Liz Peek, but I mean, it's not 100% right either. So, and that's why this is marked as an opinion piece, and I made sure to tell you right away from the beginning that this was opinion, not fact. All right, another one from Fox News. Bipartisan breakthrough. Polls unveil back-to-work plan for reopening economy with emphasis on the mass testing. This is from Marissa Schultz over at Fox News. After spending weeks dividing into coronavirus issues over video conferencing, a bipartisan group of 50 House members has crafted a plan for what's needed to reopen the economy safely and help businesses recover from crippling mandatory shutdowns. Fox News got an exclusive first look at the Problem Solvers Caucus plan that outlines specific public health, economic recovery, and long-term stimulus plans the group wants Congress and President Trump to embrace as the nation tries to emerge from weeks-long quarantines and growing mass layoffs. The bottom line is people, I think, are eager for a checklist. They want to understand what we think it takes to get everything. No, we don't give a fuck what you think. What it takes to get everything moving again, Representative Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, co-chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus, told Fox News. The Problem Solvers Caucus on Monday will unveil publicly its back-to-work checklist that is poised to be an influential framework in Washington in future rounds of coronavirus relief packages. The plan got the green light from the group of pragmatic lawmakers determined to deliver Americans some relief. What this checklist does is it shows that if you're sincere and you want to put partisan politics aside, you can actually roll up your sleeves and you can find some common ground that makes a lot of common sense, Representative Tom Reed of New York, co-chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus, told Fox News. It also shows that you can get the necessary votes at 218 and 60 to get it done in the House and Senate. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice that we'd have to have a supermajority in both houses again instead of the simple majority crap that we've been seeing? The White House already released its plan for three-phase gradual opening led by states, but it was panned by some governors and Speaker Pelosi as being too vague and not stressing mass rapid testing, pet projects, no surprise, and contact tracing. But the top of the list for bipartisan lawmakers' checklist is the importance of rapid mass COVID-19 testing at a scale that could be upwards of 5 times greater than what's currently happening. The Problem Solvers Caucus checklist calls for establishing a federal contact tracing database similar to how the federal government already tracks measles and who is in contact with Kevin Bacon. The lawmakers say the supply chain for PPE also needs to ramp up to cover workers in all essential sectors, from food service to schools. Their checklist calls for all K-12 children and teachers having access to protective masks and return to school. By return to school, they mean return to government indoctrination, because homeschooling is evil. In the short run, we need to get our schools back open. There it is, Gottheimer said, of having teachers and students wear masks. That's part of the precaution we're going to have to take. If you're in an area in New York and New Jersey that's been hit the hardest, we want to take every precaution. So, I love this one. Operating under the principle that a vaccine won't be available for at least another year, lawmakers said they needed to look at establishing a new normal in American society of regularly wearing protective gear as regions and states slowly get back to work while acknowledging regional and economic differences. The plan sets national benchmarks that must be met to reopen the United States, which has been hard hit at least 22 million new layoffs and more than 750,000 COVID-19 infections. The lawmakers recommend reconfiguring business layouts for social distancing, ramping up cleaning and sanitizing public spaces and workplaces, and adopting data-driving benchmarks that will trigger the Department of Homeland Security to implement travel restrictions to and from infected countries. The almighty vaccine. Yep, not going to take that either, by the way, just so you know. I want to get this. I want to get the I'm actually pretty sure I've already had it, but I want to get the antibodies and get back to work. But yes, it is very interesting the fact that the first thing they're saying is we need to get people back to school. We need to get these kids back in their indoctrination. But yes, I do appreciate the fact that they are trying to get people back to work. So we will see what is in that bill coming up. As soon as I can get my hands on a copy of it, I'm going to read it cover to cover because that's what I do. And we will see what's in there. We've got one from PBS, the public broadcasting system, and it's not about Big Bird. Wait, they're on HBO now, not PBS. Pritzker outlines efforts to expand COVID-19 testing capacity sites. This is from Kristen Tometz over at WTTW. Testing is a key element of Illinois' fight against COVID-19, and on Thursday, Governor Pritzker provided an update on the state's efforts to expand testing capacity. Last week, Pritzker outlined the state's plan to increase the number of tests conducted daily to 10,000 and revealed the shortcomings of 5 testing machines from Thermo Fisher that promised to run 200 tests per hour. Those machines would not be used until they could produce accurate results, Pritzker said at the time. Those machines are now up and running with reliable results, Pritzker said Thursday afternoon. So reliable that as we ramp up over the next week, we're estimating additional capacity of thousands more tests per day at our state labs alone. Machines and labs are only one part of the equation, Pritzker said. We've also needed to find adequate supplies necessary to take specimens. Over the past month, obtaining the raw materials for specimens, notably viral transport medium called VTM and swabs, has been difficult. But those problems have been more or less solved. Our university partners at Illinois Tech, Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, and the University of Illinois at Chicago, and University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, as well as outside vendors, have committed collectively to providing us with enough VTM and swabs that we can not only stock our own state labs, but support additional labs throughout the state, Pritzker said. This means that even more specimens being taken for testing. Labs in need of those materials can request them through their local emergency management agency, he added. With the increased capacity of machines and labs and new supply of raw materials, we can now take more specimens to test, Pritzker said. It's a great place to be at, having the ability to expand testing sites now that we can run more tests. Pritzker announced that the state will be expanding testing through its network of federally qualified health centers, including TCA Health in Roseland and Chatham, the Erie Family Health Centers in Evanston, Scotia region, and Howard Brown locations in Englewood, Hyde Park, Austin, and Little Village. Among others, according to the governor's office, dozens more are preparing to bring their operations online. A list of these sites and their contact information, along with information on testing eligibility, can be found online. So from that list, let's look here. Roseland and Chatham, I'm not familiar with, but Evanston, Skokie, and Englewood, Hyde Park, Austin, and Little Village says that they're going to be focusing this on Chicago, which is not a bad thing. Because, like New York, a lot of Chicago, they're just living on top of each other, but you have more of a state than just Chicago. I mean, you've got millions of acres of state. That's millions of square kilometers for those of you over in the UK that are watching this, but you've got millions and millions of acres of area here that are outside of the city of Chicago that you are also responsible for. But I do applaud the effort, and of course, I'm sure that Pritzker is looking at his projected tax receipts for next year and wondering how he's going to pay his bills. So that's going to be something to keep in mind as we go forward here. Now we're going to listen to this video here, so I'll turn the desktop audio back on and grab the old headphones so we can listen here. But what we're going to look at here is a counter-protest for nurses who want everybody to stay at home longer and not open up the economy anymore. And, of course, the Washington Post finding the absolute worst person to represent the open up side. So let's hear what we've got going on here. Give me just a minute. Now, because we're going to be listening to this and not watching it, the scene here is that a woman is yelling outside of a Dodge Ram at a nurse that's standing on the in the crosswalk and blocking traffic as a counter-protest. So let's get this open. There's going to be a lot of horn honking. I apologize for the noise, but let's hear what that sounds like. So, as you heard, the woman is screaming the fact that this is a free country, which it is. And this is kind of where I was going when I said that we need to see if we can find some sort of middle ground in all of this, because there's got to be some way that we can work together on this. And I've seen some extremists on the far left, or I don't even want to say the far left anymore. I should say the extremists on the far keep it locked down as hard as we can for as long as we can, that say that anybody who wants to go back to work at this point shouldn't be allowed to get health care. That is not a viable option. In fact, that is against the Hippocratic Oath. So if you're going to espouse that, then get your ass out of the healthcare field, because I don't want to go get healthcare from you, and I can think of a lot of people that don't as well. But there does have to be some sort of middle ground, and yes, they found the most extreme person to put as the face of this, and I mean, the people that want the country closed down forever are going to be using this woman as a citation rather than those of us who think that we need to find some sort of middle ground. So I've got one more tweet on this from the same thing. It's from a Washington Post article, and I'm not giving the Washington Post any money, so we're not going to read that article. But Jennifer Hassan tweets out, "Many say Sunday's face-off in Denver illustrates a rift in what is now tearing apart the seams of the United States, between those who want society to reopen despite the deadly pandemic, and those working on the front lines to handle its devastation." Because that's not biased or anything like that. And yes, I mean, it's not a deadly pandemic anymore, as people keep trying to say. Yes, a lot of people get it, but a lot of people recover from it too. And a lot of people have already had it and have recovered from it. So there's got to be some way that we can work together. There's got to be a middle ground on this. There's got to be a way that we can get people back in working, possibly under different circumstances. And I'd love to see what's in this bill that's coming up. And still get people that don't want to be involved in this protected, either working from home or having advanced unemployment that they can still access if they do feel that they're at risk. There's got to be a middle ground somewhere, but we can't keep fighting this way. So, moving on. Last thing on the COVID, Whitmer defends stay-at-home orders amid protests, says coronavirus is disproportionately hurting Michigan. This is from Andrew O'Reilly over at Fox News. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer continued on Sunday to defend her updated stay-at-home orders to battle the coronavirus pandemic, despite facing large protests from residents eager to get out of their house. Whitmer argued that she enforced stricter measures because Michigan has been hit particularly hard by the contagion, and that these orders are a way to flatten the curve. Michigan right now is the third highest death count in the country. We are the 10th largest state, and as you can deduce, this means that we have a uniquely hard issue going on here, Whitmer said Sunday on CNN's State of the Union. It is disproportionately hurting our state, and that is why we need to take a uniquely aggressive action to protect people. She added, "We are seeing the curve start to flatten, and that means we're saving lives." Last week, thousands of trucks and cars descended into Michigan's state capital of Lansing as angry residents protested Whitmer's orders. The protest even drew the support of President Trump, who tweeted, "Liberate Michigan," last week. Yeah, we're doing one of those over in this state here a little bit later on in the week as well. I believe it is scheduled for Friday. And I'm going to see if I can find a way to go out there and get up there and watch it go on and do some man on the street stuff. I don't think I'm going to be able to, just on the short notice that's coming, but I'm going to try. Quarantine is when you restrict the movement of sick people. Tyranny is when you restrict the movement of healthy people. Michonne Maddock, an organizer of the Operation Gridlock protest with the Michigan Conservative Coalition, told Fox News. Every person has learned a harsh lesson about social distancing. We don't need a nanny state to tell people how to be careful. While much of the anger from the protests was directed at the number of job losses and the economic freefall caused by the lockdown orders as a result of the virus, other complaints ranged from bans on purchasing items deemed non-essential to prohibitions on using motorboats, but allowing kayaks and canoes to be used. Yeah, that was about the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Whitmer attempted to clear up the confusion Sunday by saying we've got to be really smart about the actions we take now to protect life, as well as the actions we take to re-engage the economy, and that she doesn't want to cause a second wave of infections by reopening the state too early. You notice, and this is something that I noticed on Saturday morning, all these people, especially around this area, Governor Evers, Governor Pritzker, and Governor Whitmer. I think I mentioned this on Ed Talk, but I don't remember if I did or not. But all these people they've all been governors for like 5 seconds. They're all first-term governors that were inaugurated in 2019. And they're all Democrats too, but I don't know, was Newsom? Is this his first term, or his first time around? Because I think he's been governor for like 5 seconds too, but yeah. All 3 of them around this area have been governors for like a total of 5 minutes. As of Sunday, Michigan had reported more than 30,000 confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus, with 2,191 deaths. Wayne County, home to Detroit, has seen 10,070 deaths, the most of any county in the country outside of New York City metropolitan area, according to figures compiled by the Center for Systems, Science, and Engineering at Johns Hopkins University. And once again, we've got a place where people are living literally on top of each other in a state that's mostly rural and the rest of it. So one city is causing the problem for the entire state, and of course that's the only thing that they're focusing on as we go here. And yes, I do for the most part think that this is too draconian. Whitmer is doing everything in her power for Lansing and Detroit and ignoring the rest of her state. Evers is doing everything for Madison, Milwaukee, and Green Bay and ignoring the rest of his state. And Pritzker is doing everything for Chicago and forgetting the fact that there's a downstate. So, like I said, middle ground. We've got to find one. Now to talk about something that doesn't rhyme with COVID. Trump on the Russia investigation. Now the tables are turned. This is also from Daily Wire News. President Donald Trump said on Sunday during the White House Coronavirus Task Force conference that people would soon find out what he was going to do with General Michael Flynn and Roger Stone, who were convicted in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation, and that the tables are turned against those who launched the investigation. General Flynn was a highly respected person, and it turned out to be a scam on him, Trump said. The FBI said he didn't lie, and Mueller's people wanted him to go to jail, okay? So what am I going to do? You'll find out what I'm going to do. I'm not going to say what I'm going to do, but I'll tell you the whole thing will be turned out to be a scam, and it turned out to be a disgrace for our country, and it was a takedown of a duly elected president. Trump's comments came as news broke last week that the FBI knew that the anti-Trump dossier that they used to get the FISA warrants to surveil Trump campaign was likely corrupted by Russian disinformation from Russia's intelligence service, as reported by National Review. And these people suffered greatly. General Flynn, what they did to him, and even the FBI said, and they had some nobody bigger fan of the FBI than me at the level of the people that really matter, Trump continued. But the FBI was scum, what they did to General Flynn, and everybody knows it. It was a disgrace. He was in the service for over 30 years. He ends up being general and respected. And almost his first day in office, they come at me with papers. They want to investigate him. Never happened before, and now the tables are turned. Investigate the investigators, I guess. They were crooked people, Trump added. These were bad people. These are very dangerous people. The most dangerous. You know what they are, though? They're scum. They're human scum. They're terrific scum. They're frankly the best scum. So that's going to be interesting. And we might as well drag out the next crisis because this one's almost over and they need to start another crisis to keep people with the fear porn shot in their arm. All right, one last article here before we go back to the Shake Shack thing and things that restore my faith in humanity. Witnesses describe chaos during a Nova Scotia shooting rampage. This is from David Arrow over at Fox News. Witnesses have begun to describe the chaos during Sunday's deadly shooting rampage in Nova Scotia, Canada, that killed at least 16 people in multiple crime scenes and left victims scattered across the province. A truck driver from Ontario told CTV News that he stopped at a gas station where the suspect, Gabriel Wortman, 51, was taken into custody and later died. Tom Narani said he stopped to shower and have breakfast when he heard an employee shouting. She goes, "Oh my God, lock the doors, he's here." And I peeked out the window and I saw some RCMP vehicles and there was 4 or 5 uniforms with guns, said Narani. Other witnesses told the news division that they saw police at the scene and heard gunshots and saw a body on the ground. All I could hear was gunshots, and my wife, I thought I was going to call 911 because she was going into a panic. It scared her so bad, said Glenn Hines, who was driving by the station. There was multiple, probably between 5 or 10 gunshots. It was steady, recalled Dion Wells, who lives in the area, according to CTV News. Chris Leather, the police superintendent, wouldn't confirm the suspect was shot by police, but he did say officers were involved in terminating the threat. Sounds to me like he confirmed it. Wortman went on a 12-hour rampage and apparently disguised himself as a police officer. The vehicle he was in was believed to be a mock-up made to look like an RCMP cruiser. One of his victims was a 23-year veteran on the Nova Scotia RCMP, Constable Heidi Stevenson, a mother of 2. Heidi answered the call of duty and lost her life while protecting those she served, police said. A possible motive for the shooter was unclear, as police said many of his victims did not know the killer. Several bodies turned up inside and outside of a home in the town of Portapique, which police called the first crime scene. Wortman is listed as a denturist in the city of Dartmouth, near Halifax, according to the Denturist Society of Nova Scotia website. A suspect photo issued by the RCMP appears to be of the same person seen in the video footage being interviewed about dentures by CTV Atlantic in 2014. My heart goes out to everyone affected in what was a terrible situation, Prime Minister Trudeau said, while adding, it was an additional heavy burden amid efforts to contain some of the virus. Meanwhile, he was painting his face for victim points. Christine Mills, a resident of the area, said it was a frightening night for her as armed officers patrolled the streets and helicopters flew overhead looking for the suspect. It's nerve-wracking because you don't know if somebody has lost their mind and is going to beat in your front door, she said. Several building fires were reported as well, but police didn't immediately confirm details. Bergerman added that countless families are in mourning today who need the support of others. It was described as the deadliest such attack in Canadian history. Today is a devastating day for Nova Scotia and it will remain etched in the minds of many for years to come, said Bergerman. Mass shootings are relatively rare in Canada. The country overhauled its gun control laws after gunman Mark Lepine killed 14 women and himself at Montreal's École Polytechnique College in 1989. Before this weekend's rampage, that had been the country's worst. And it just goes to show, you're not going to see a rampage like this in common areas over in Texas or in rural areas in Wisconsin or places where they're friendly to guns. They just said right in the end of the article, they have extremely draconian gun laws, and yet this still happened because it's a soft target. It's very unlikely that anybody is going to be armed in this. You don't go on a shooting rampage where people are going to shoot back. All right, that's all that I have for news, but before we leave on Monday, we always look at something that restores my faith in humanity. And at this point, we're going to go back to Shake Shack because that does restore my faith in humanity. Now, there are a lot of businesses out there, and we looked at a lot of this in the 2008 and 2009 stimulus, where these companies that probably could have got by without the stimulus were taking this and giving their CEOs more bonuses, buying another private plane. They definitely weren't going to the workers or keeping workers on staff, but this money was going back into the pockets of the business owners, and even indirectly, if they did use it to retain some staff, of course, that was going to up the production and keep some of the money into the hands of the CEOs. I often said that GM could have restructured itself and probably got by. Maybe started to sell off some of these companies and let some other companies rise up in their places with market competition. They didn't need to take the government money to do so. Ford didn't need to take the government money to do so, but they were kind of forced to do so. The government put some pressure on them with tax credits and whatnot to make sure that they took the money to get the bailout in. So that way they could come out and say that, yes, everybody took the bailout. And just the same, it would have been very easy for Shake Shack to take this money and keep this money in their pockets, to keep their people on payroll and just use the government money. Instead, now they're giving it back because they've got assets. They're New York based, but they're nationwide. I've been to a Shake Shack. They're nationwide. There's a great shake, by the way, too. It's a great place to go buy stuff. But they've got the money to keep them. They can restructure themselves and keep it open. So giving this $10 million back to little restaurants across northern Wisconsin or rural Minnesota, places along Route 66, or somewhere down in Colorado, or somewhere up in Wyoming, places where $10 million could go a long way, especially if you spread it across several different restaurants. We could get a lot more out of that with a lot of these smaller places than what Shake Shack is going to keep doing. I keep wanting to say Steak Shack, but it's Shake Shack. That's hard to say over and over again, I will say that. But the fact that they looked at their situation, reassessed, and gave up their money means that there are still good people in business. And that's what restores my faith in humanity. And of course, tomorrow we're going to read the Twitter trending and I'm going to lose all my faith in humanity again. But for now, this restores my faith in humanity. So thank you, Shake Shack, for what you've done for small business across the country. And that is going to be what we have today. We are going to be back later tonight with Ed's World from Seawall. And you're going to see me fretting a little bit more as we go along because I currently have no guest for the following Monday. I've got 2 leads out and no replies yet. So this is going to be interesting. I have no idea who I'm going to be talking to next week for Ed's World, but we will be talking to fan favorite Seawall. We won't be seeing his armor today because he didn't bring it with him to his new compound, but we'll get to hear his wonderful dulcet tones and his opinions and everything, and I'm looking forward to that. Come back and check us out tonight. We do read the live chat between topics, so if you've got a question for myself or Seawall, make sure you get on in. Otherwise, we will be back here tomorrow, or you can catch this on the audio platform later today. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.